I have no doubt that Mrs. Pelosi will have this be an endless committee process.
It's all political theater, and that's what it is.
I think the committee's pretty fundamentally flawed. I think it's overtly political. It's really not necessary.
Anybody says nonpartisan up here, that's a joke, and everybody knows it.
So it seems to be going well so far. If that's any indication, there won't be many GOP yeses when the House votes on a select committee to investigate January 6th. Exactly who ultimately serves on the select committee has yet to be determined. We know there will be 13 members. Speaker Pelosi gets to pick 8. Kevin McCarthy gets a say in the other 5. A Pelosi aide confirmed to NBC News she's, quote, seriously considering appointing a Republican with one of her unilateral picks. Well, back with us tonight, Don Calloway, Democratic strategist, founder of the National Voter Protection Action Fund, Bill Kristol, author, writer, thinker, Politico, veteran of the Reagan and Bush administrations, editor-at-large over at The Bulwark. Gentlemen, welcome to you both. Bill Kristol, let's start at 30,000 feet. Is there, in your most hopeful world, is there any construct under which the Republicans, and we just heard from a few, regret voting no on a bipartisan commission?
Most of them don't regret that. They think they'll vote against this. They'll say it's all partisan. I do think Pelosi is going to appoint one Republican from her 8 picks, either Liz Cheney or Adam Kinzinger. The 2 votes for impeachment who haven't backed off at all, that's not quite fair, who have been willing to follow through and to continue to call Donald Trump to account. The others have sort of, tried to go quiet a little bit, get along with people in their district, not pick more fights with Trump and so forth. Cheney and Kinzinger have been pretty fearless, pretty impressive in my opinion, and I think one of them could well end up on that select committee. So that will be interesting. But that's 2 Republicans out of what are there, 210 in the House, and I think they might be the only 2 votes for the committee.
Don, I want to, as a formality, hear from Congressman Clyburn. This was on this network earlier today. We'll discuss on the other side.
Would you support the appointment of Liz Cheney or an Adam Kinzinger to the committee using one of the Speaker's unilateral picks?
Yes, I would. I think both of them are Republicans. Both of them are conservative Republicans. And both of them are real about what happened on January 6th. So I think that the Speaker would do well to demonstrate bipartisanship by appointing one of them to the committee.
So, Don, you heard the man. You heard Bill before the congressman. Talk about risk versus reward on appointing one of those 2 names, the Republicans that Democrats seem to like.
That's a great question, Brian. It's very important that we consider the Speaker's procedural powers here. Obviously, as you said, the Speaker can present 8 members. The Minority Leader gets to present 5 members. But it's important, the little word that you presented at the top of, the Minority Leader is to be consulted with, but it does not require his consent. Therefore, not even the 5 Republican members really require the Speaker's consent. What the Speaker's doing here is making sure that she can say that this was a truly bipartisan process, rather than giving the Republicans 5 just platforms to talk crazy and filibuster on this thing. They can take their own time. They can take one of the Democratic spots to spit Democratic talking points out of the 7 Democratic seats that are, 8 Democratic seats that are available here. Very important tactic. Therefore, she can say that Republicans are saying what we want to say. Ultimately, I think that would be a really, really smart thing for Speaker Pelosi to do. There's no universe under which Kevin McCarthy, in his 5 picks, would present anyone other than the most hardline Republicans. Now, we have one in Marjorie Taylor Greene, who, in the words of Chris Tucker from Friday, she ain't got nothing else to do but pay attention to this because she doesn't have any other committees. Therefore, she can put all the time and all of the effort in all of her idle-handedness to put towards this, and that's just a risk that the Democrats, unfortunately, would have to take, but they can mitigate by balancing out that time with reasonable points on the Democratic appointee side. I think it will be a wonderful idea for Speaker Pelosi to use some of her picks with Republicans who can say reasonable things on the side of what was very clear, that this insurrection killed 5 real American people.
Bill Kristol, Pelosi has apparently invited members of the D.C. Metropolitan Police, members of the Capitol Police who were there on that day to be in the gallery for the vote. Obviously, it is a gesture. Will that gesture have any effect? Will it change a single vote, do you think?
You know, honestly, I doubt it. The degree to which the Republican Party, with the exception of Cheney and Kinzinger and a couple of others maybe, and then a lot of us, and then another dozen or 20 or 30 want to just keep their head down. The degree to which all the others are just all in on memory holding January 6th, on ignoring what might be a very short-term PR hit because they are convinced that they just need to keep all their people on board and make it seem as if it's a partisan inquiry looking back. I mean, look what's happening in Arizona. Look what's happening in all the states on election integrity. Look what's happening on the big lie. It's really, I wish I could say that the Republicans will look up into the gallery and feel a pang of conscience, but I don't think I can say that.
At least Trump is going to the southern border tomorrow, so we've got that going for us. Both of these gentlemen have agreed to stay with us while we fit in a break. Coming up, even Joe Biden concedes his infrastructure deal has a rocky road ahead. Seems like that was a metaphor. Seems like the problems still lurk in his own party as well. Back with more after this.
The jobs that are going to be created here largely will be those for blue-collar workers, the majority of whom will not have to have a college degree to have those jobs. A lot of those folks are being left behind now. The guys who grew up with in Scranton and Claymont are being left behind. This is the answer for good-paying jobs.
President Biden on the road today selling the bipartisan infrastructure deal to the American people. At the same time, he's still trying, let's not forget, to convince some in his own party. Politico writes his dilemma this way. Moderates are worried about too much spending in a second one-party bill, while progressives are worried about too little spending, and senior Democrats are caught in the middle. How 2021 is that? Still with us are our guests, Don Calloway and Bill Kristol. So, Don, you get the first question in this segment, which you may regret. What advice would you give Joe Biden for holding all the Democrats? What advice would you give the Democrats on the left? And remember, say it with me, the unofficial slogan of the Democratic Party, never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. Don, it's all yours.
Indeed, in my lifetime, Democrats have been fantastic at snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. In the words of Eminem, my advice to Joe Biden is you only get one shot. Do not miss your chance to blow. Joe Biden cannot trust 3 people. Joe Manchin, he cannot trust Mitch McConnell, and unfortunately, he cannot trust Chuck Schumer that there will be another opportunity at a substantive spending bill. He's got to go big. He's got to throw all of the spending and all of the possible things that could be construed by infrastructure into this one bill, go big, go hard, or go home. And really the debate here, Brian, is over classical infrastructure, roads, bridges, tunnels, pipes, and human infrastructure, which is what the progressives like Richie Torres of New York are pushing for. That's affordable housing, that's broadband, although broadband is inching its way into the discussion into classical infrastructure. We're talking about what goes into the idea of infrastructure. And the progressives are saying that we don't trust that the mansions and cinemas are going to give us another opportunity to come back and do another bill that includes human infrastructure. Biden has got to just go big and go hard. One big bill that encompasses everything, spending be damned or be worried about another day, because there's just no evidence in the makeup of this Congress that they're going to create another opportunity for a more humane, humanistic spending bill that encompasses a whole lot more than just classical infrastructure. You got to do it all with this one.
Bill, I'm tempted to ask you a quaint question about isn't there pressure on Republicans, especially in the Senate, to get on board, to go home and brag on all they are bringing home in the way of goodies and jobs from Washington? But I'm reminded we're living in the post-truth society where I remember a couple members of Congress and Senator Wicker specifically, if memory serves, who bragged about bringing home the bacon after not voting for the relief bill, told the restaurant industry, hey, help is on the way. So I guess they can have it both ways. Republicans now can vote no on constituent services and still claim credit for bringing home the bacon.
We're living in such a partisan and polarized time that Republicans can say they're voting against Joe Biden and hope and maybe expect a fair number of their constituents not really to quite, care too much about what exactly they're voting against. And as you say, let the senators and members of the House to still come home and take credit for various bridges and improvements and so forth. So I don't think there's not the old-fashioned kind of pressure that you had in a much less partisan and polarized environment, that you showed that you were bringing home the goods, and therefore you got votes from people in the other party. That made sense when half the senators in each party came from states that were closely divided. When I got to Washington 35 years ago, half the states had one senator from each state. I think now it's 6, 22. Almost all the states, 44 states, have 2 senators, 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats. And Trump or Biden carried those states. So in a partisan world, the bringing home the bacon seems to matter less. Still matters some, though. And I think Biden's doing okay on this. It's complicated. The sausage making's always kind of a mess, and you have a lot of zigs and zags, and 1 step forward and 2 back, and then 1.5 forward, and so forth. But I think you'll end up with some bipartisan infrastructure bill, a smaller one that he'll get through, and then they'll do a lot of other stuff in reconciliation. And I think it's good for him. He looks like he's trying to deal with the problems. It is trying to deal with the problems of the country, while the Republicans are opposing discovering the truth about January 6th. And they've got Paul Gosar out there hanging out with Holocaust deniers. And so I actually don't quite share the despair of Democrats at this moment. I think the Biden administration is doing okay.
At least members of Gosar's family believe he should be removed from Congress, so he has that going for him. Gentlemen, thank you so much, as always. Bill Kristol, Don Callaway, and Alabama A&M, we're looking at you. You're on the board. Go Bulldogs. Thank you, gentlemen. We'll do it again.